So little by little, I'm moving the metal further back. You can see a little bit of the crown work that had gotten broken up throughout the crown removal process. No worries here. We will be treating them just kind of like little round dents and little lows. And again, just trying to make it symmetrical. We will wind up using the sharper knockdown in that area much, much more where we had to do the crown work. You know, a lot of this is going to be about blending that into the natural texture of the panel. So here we go, still making some tapping and some tap down on the outside of the panel. And you're always going to see little waves emerge. So you got to remember, the closer you get to finishing up a stage of this dent. So again, I'm breaking this thing into stages. We start out bulk metal movement, go down to each stage. You're going to get closer towards the end of that metal movement period, to where your pushing and your hammer knockdown work are going to come closer together. So you might do a push, 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 and then a knockdown, knockdown, knockdown. You know, and then it might come a little bit closer to that. You might be doing a push, a knockdown, a push, a knockdown, a push, a knockdown. So as you near the end of each phase of this, each phase of metal movement, your knockdown work is going to come much closer to your pushing work. And you can see here I'm actually hooking down that soft tip tool. Got to be careful when you do this. I'm going to tell you, because soft tips have the nature of popping off. So I'm doing a push, and occasionally I pull that thing out and take a look at it to make sure that it's not being kind of shoved down the towards the end of the tool, where it will slip and inject itself off, and then my tool will flip around and put a big old nasty high spot on the panel. That has happened, and it does happen, but we're going to try to not let it happen. But you can see here, hooking that soft tip down in there has been nice. I can't get it all the way to the very, very edge. However, I can open up the perimeter of that very edge and open that up so I can get another tool down in there for finishing work. You can see here I'm using the sharper tip knockdown on this one. I don't want the whole dent to fall back in. I want to pinpoint precision my push at this point. So essentially, every little push that I make, I want to be able to tap right on the top of it and move as least metal as possible back into the dent. And that's specifically in this area. One of the major reasons is why I was telling you earlier, because I can't get this soft tip all the way to the edge. So we have that, per se, that dent on the edge that's not even going to be lifted until we switch to a sharper tip. So we're trying to keep it away from falling right back on into that deepest part on the edge. Here we go, and I know this looks rough, but like I told you guys, this is going to be the hardest part of this entire repair, and the reasoning why, you know why, it's because we weren't able to move the metal, we weren't able to use bulk metal movement like we were for the rest of the dent. But that's all right, because that's where a little bit of skill comes in. And we just do our best to dial this thing in. And at this point, we're going to go ahead and switch out to a tool that kind of complements the bend of this panel here. You see how that thing just literally, if you can imagine holding the tool on the outside of the panel, and then its shape being just perfect for the area that you're trying to hit, that is exactly what this hockey stick tool was able to do for us in this scenario. And there's a lot of times before I do a dent, I measure the tool up to the outside of the panel just to make sure it's going to be something that's going to be complementary to what I'm doing inside of the panel. And this one has been great, but we still got to take it slow. I mean, this is a bare metal tip here, and we're getting into the very, very edge of this, and we're actually working some of the little holes around some of this bulk metal that we moved out with the soft tip. And it's just going to give us that pinpoint precision that we need in this area to get this thing flat. I mean, that's going to be the key. I mean, I'm going to get this thing as flat as possible in this situation, and then I'm moving on to the rest of the dent. And at the end, when I'm dialing in, when I'm taking a sharp mark circus tool and I am dialing in everything, then I'm going to go in and I'm going to dial this in as well. Oh, you see a little mishit that I had right there. That happens too. That's because it was right up near the firewall around the gas tank. And it holds a little bit more tension in that area, being right up against that double panel up there. Thank goodness, though, I'm able to reach it. And if not, we would be throwing a whale tail in there and trying to cut a little bit of glue, but it happens to be in a spot that we can reach, and no problem at all. So, hey, if you ever make a mistake, don't feel too bad. Just keep on rolling, keep on moving forward. Never get complacent, never get stuck in one spot. You know, a lot of times if there's a part of a dent that's starting to drive you crazy when you're breaking it up, then just move on to something else and come back to it at the end. It's a lot easier when you're 90% through this damage and everything is basically downhill at that point to come in and dial in a area that was kind of bothering you to begin with. A lot like playing golf. It's like a mental game at some point. Sometimes you want to do your most in one part, and if something just, occasionally, and I see this with my students all the time. They break up a large dent and they start to get frustrated, a body line or something like that starts to frustrate them. I say, well, how about you move on to this little shallow over here? You bring that up. And how about you move on to over here and you start bringing that up and then come back to your body line and finish there. And I'll tell you, 90% of the time when they come back, they're fresh, they much more confident, and that's just part of the game. You can see here, I'm still trying to shape up that edge. Little bit of knockdown work as well. But overall, I mean, compared to what we were dealing with 5-10 minutes ago, I mean, this thing is coming up nice, in my opinion. That back edge lip right there is going to be the only part of this repair that I'm going to wet sand. So there we go. I want to step back and get that subtle wave. And you can see what I'm using. I'm using the metal tip there. I want some nice pinpoint precision. That area's got a little bit of a bounce. So you want to use something that's actually going to drive the metal down like a metal tip. Now we're just kind of working that thing right off the edge, making our pushes down into the line down there. You can kind of still see the dirt line of where the molding was applied there. And you got to get that area straight, as straight as possible down there because you want to have the least amount of gaps in this molding. However, I have looked at the other side, and just due to age, the thing is a little bit wavy. So I suspect we will be able to get this side almost, if not as good as the other side. So there we go. Feel a little bit more tension there. You'll notice something when I told you about the metal tip and the rubber tip. See, the rubber tip's actually moving metal here because it's not bouncing. Earlier, when we were a little further up, it was an area that bounced, so we want to use the metal tip to drive the metal down. So as you tend to get closer towards this lower half, you actually don't have as much bounce as when you get further up into the panel. You can see the metal laying down rather nicely down towards the where we're going to be putting back the molding. There we go. Still making some pushes here. We're still using a soft tip at this point, by the way. Kind of switched out from the hockey stick there a little while ago. And now we're going to be using another soft tip. And this one's got a strong curve, and that's going to help me get the back edge of this panel. So we're going to be able to kind of curve it around and hit that whole back edge. Just begin to get that a little bit symmetrical as well. Definitely going to want to go ahead and bring that up into the rest of the dent, stabilizing it so we can work the middle of the damage as well. You can see they're getting pretty close to the edge there. Definitely moving a lot of metal. Still using that soft tip. We're still in that phase. The only sharp tip that I broke out at this point was the hockey stick, and that was just because I could not get a soft tip all the way to the back edge. So far so good with the soft tips. You can really begin to see the damage start to take shape at this point. I'm using a sharper tip knockdown on this because I'm wanting to pinpoint these little pushes that I'm making, and I'm wanting to lay them down flush. I was afraid that if I used the soft tip knockdown, I would kind of get that effect to where, you know, you push it up with the soft tip and you tap it down with the soft tip, you just bring it down into a low. So I'm pushing it, I'm overextending it a little bit with the soft tip, and then I'm tapping it with the sharper knockdown, trying to make it level. Essentially, I'm just not moving as much metal on the knockdown phase. Moving a bunch of metal on the pushing phase, and then just a little metal to lay it down flat on the knockdown phase. So there we go, still working that back edge, kind of working a little further into where the larger dent was. And this is kind of what I want you to do. I want you to rinse and repeat what I'm doing here. I'm going to move this technique all the way through this panel. And if you notice, because we're at a level to where we're doing our finishing with our soft tip work, my exchange between my pushing and tapping is getting closer. So I'll push 5, 6, maybe 10 little lows that are far away from each other, making sure I don't mound the whole area. So I'm essentially taking a little bitty low here and there, flipping it inside out, turning it into a high spot, and then coming in with that sharper knockdown and tapping down 5 or 6 spots.